10 years after The Hunger Games Mockingjay was published, Suzanne Collins released the prequel to the trilogy, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Then, last year, we got the movie, directed by Francis Lawrence and starring Tom Blythe and Rachel Zegler. The story follows President Snow in his younger years, during the 10th Hunger Games, and we get to see the decline from the kind, damaged boy he once was into the hateful, terrible man that we know he became. But despite the fact that we know what a tyrant Coriolanus turns into, I still found myself hoping for that happily ever after. It's sort of like going to see Romeo and Juliet in a way. You know things don't end with them running off into the sunset together, and yet, when you see him calling up to her as she stands on that balcony, you're swept away into the whimsical love that they share and start to delude yourself that this time will be different. Despite the fact that Lucy Gray and Corio's relationship was doomed to fail, a part of me wished it wouldn't. And that is part of the genius of Collins' writing. It's not something any author could do, either, to make us sympathetic to a character we know ends up having the blood of thousands on his hands. And she also shows his descent into his own dark side with such skill and precision that we go from sympathising with his character to despising him in a matter of chapters. Part of what I loved about this book was seeing the capital in the early days after the war. In the original trilogy, we didn't get to see a whole lot of the capital, and what we did see of it was in the context of Katniss either fighting in the rebellion or preparing for the Hunger Games. However, in Songbirds and Snakes, we get to experience the capital through Snow's eyes, and it's not as glossy and glamorous as it is in the trilogy. Part of that is because everyone there is still recovering from their losses in the war. The Snow family are half starving because of it and are concerned that they might lose their home, and everyone in the capital has, at one point or another, done heinous things in order to survive. Coriolanus attends university, and that is where the story truly begins, as the students are tasked with mentoring the tributes for the 10th Hunger Games, and with suggesting any ideas to make more people watch the games. This is how Corio meets Lucy Gray, a travelling singer selected as District 12's female tribute. As the story unravels, their relationship deepens, but it's not your classic love story. Both of them never quite trust each other, and both of them are playing a balancing act between actually caring for one another and figuring out how they can use the other to survive. In the end, Snow comes to the conclusion that Lucy Gray is the final loose end he needs to get rid of. But the ending we got with the pair of them in both the book and the film was completely open-ended, up to interpretation. Did he kill her? Did she escape? Or was he just going mad? Personally, I thought the movie was a brilliant adaptation. It was extremely loyal to the source material, more than I'd expected honestly, as there was a lot that they needed to pack into one film. But they did it, and the outcome was an incredibly impressive picture that reignited the Hunger Games craze across the world. I should have known it would be one hell of a blockbuster when I saw Francis Lawrence was directing, as he directed Catching Fire and both Mockingjays, so this film was in safe hands. First of all, it was beautiful. The locations were stunning, the sets were detailed and exciting, and the visual effects were superb. The score by James Newton Howard was also wonderful and tied the whole movie together. The games were especially cool. It was interesting to see them in such an early, basic stage compared to the spectacle that they are in the original trilogy. These games are brutal and bloody. 24 children locked in a small arena with few weapons and next to nowhere to hide. It was also a nice touch to see the stack of rubble in the middle and the weapons laid out on it, foreshadowing the cornucopia in the middle of the games decades down the line. The opening of the movie was actually great as well, as we got to see Corio and Tigris, his cousin, as children, scavenging for food after the war.
There's some food over here! Quick!
In the book, Corio only thinks or talks about those days and the terrible things he witnessed, like cannibalism. But what we see at the start of the film is enough to fill the viewer in on what his childhood was like.
Why is he doing that? He's starving.
I have heard people talking about how the end of the movie was a little abrupt and felt like it came out of nowhere. The book is obviously told from Snow's perspective, and we get to read his inner monologue through the final chapters, so I think it made a lot more sense to those of us who had read it before watching. But I thought the movie did well at capturing the essence of what Snow was thinking without doing something cheesy like a voiceover to spell it out for the audience. The whole cast was wonderful. I thought Tom Blythe's performance was excellent as Coriolanus. He didn't play into the psycho trope, which would have been very easy for him to fall into, and he didn't try to do an impression of his later self either. He showed Snow's moral decline perfectly at each stage of the film, and it was clear he put everything into this role. Rachel Zegler's performance was also excellent in my opinion. She brought Lucy Gray to life in a very interesting and watchable way, and it was great to see Lucy Gray's calculating, intelligent, and borderline manipulative side shine through, while she also develops feelings for Snow. Zegler's singing is also just transcendent, superhuman. Some people are just born with a gift, and she's one of those people.
In the hanging tree.
Snow's fallout with Lucy Gray also explains why Snow is so triggered by Katniss in the Hunger Games trilogy, as the two women share a lot of the same qualities, such as their brazenness and contempt for the Capitol. Viola Davis as Dr. Volumnia Gaul was delicious. She played the eccentric villain with such ease and playfulness that she was a delight to watch.
Welcome home, Mr. Snow.
Peter Dinklage as Dean Casca Highbottom was also stellar, as he portrayed the tortured, unintentional creator of the Hunger Games. Highbottom is a tragic character who drowns his regrets in opiates, which eventually leads to his demise at Snow's hand. Jason Schwartzman as Lucky Flickerman was a highlight for me. He was perfect for the role, a nice bit of levity amidst quite a dark story, and his one-liners were hilarious, like when he talks about watching someone's final performance when Lucy Gray sings before the games. It's just so savage.
Starting everyone, we're starting. Happy Hunger Games, happy Hunger Games. Remember, when your tribute dies, get out of here.
Sejanus Plinth, played by Josh Rivera, is a bit of a wet wipe in the book and the film. His family used to live in District 2, but his father became wealthy enough to move his family to the capital, and Sejanus resents his father for that, as he hates the capital. He's a rich kid who makes a lot of mistakes, yes, but he's also one of the only people in Coriolanus' life who has a strong sense of right and wrong, and who isn't afraid to voice his opinion on the capital's treatment of the districts.
The monsters! All of you!
And when Corio eventually snitches on him and Sejanus is executed for consorting with the rebels, it acts as one of the last nails in Snow's moral coffin. He doesn't have Sejanus to remind him of what's good or bad anymore, to keep him on track, and it's even more poignant that Snow is the one who rats him out to Dr. Gaul. He is responsible for his own unmaking. Tigris, played by Hunter Schafer, was also great. I kind of wish she'd had a bigger role in the movie like she did in the book, but Hunter delivered an excellent performance with what she did have. She had the same strength and loyalty that her character showed in the books, and even though we didn't get to hear in the movie about what she did to earn money when they were broke after the war, like we did in the book, she played it with the same depth and history as if we had been given that information. I especially loved her final line about Coriolanus looking just like his father, who she'd previously described as a cruel and hateful man earlier in the story. Overall, I thought the movie was fab, and I'm so glad that the franchise has been revived. The book, I thought, was very much needed to fill out the holes in the Hunger Games lore, and unlike a lot of prequels and sequels, it never felt like Collins was milking the franchise because of its success. She's creating stories to keep expanding the world of Panem, and considering what's going on in the world at the moment, I can understand why. I can't wait for the new book, Sunrise on the Reaping, to come out, as well as the movie that has already been greenlit. As always, thank you very much for spending your time with me, and I will be back soon with another video. Bye for now.
And may the odds be ever in your favor.